Okay. Well, I see 6:01. So in the interest of time, let's get started. Can everyone hear me? Okay, someone nod or do a thumbs up or smile or sneeze if you're by yourself. Okay. I am Josh Burst. Call to order. This is the Monday, February 28, 2022 meeting of the 4J School District Budget Committee. I am Joshua Burstein, or Josh, committee chair. And let me call the roll and let me know if you are here or present. Dakota, and if I'm going to try to get everyone's name pronounced right. If I make a mistake, please correct me. Dakota Boulette or Boulette, is it?
Either.
No. What's your preference?
I don't care.
Okay.
I guess that's it.
You guess what?
Never mind.
Okay. Dakota is here. Joshua Burstein, that's me, I'm here. Gary Campbell.
Yeah, I'm present. Thank you.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
Tom DiLiberto.
I'm here.
Hey, Tom. Yeah. Forgive the informality if I use first names, but since some of us aren't elected here, I feel it can be a little more informal. And for those who are elected, we'll call you more formal if you wish. And Fifield.
I am here.
And Commissioner. Well, I'm trying to remember your title, Alicia Hayes.
I'm thinking Czarina, maybe, but Alicia is fine.
Alicia.
Thanks. I'm here.
Yeah, Zara's not the best in these. Czarina, no, I should use that. Gordon.
Probably shouldn't.
Yeah, let's not use that one today.
Yeah, let's not.
Gordon Lafer.
Here, Josh.
Hey, Gordon, how are you? Judy Newman, Chair Judy.
I am here.
Thank you. I guess I'm the chair of this committee.
You're the chair of this committee.
You're the chair of the board. Laurel O'Rourke. Laurel, are you here? Okay, not yet. Maya Rabasa.
Hi, I'm just Maya.
Hey, Maya. I know Martina was excused. Martina Shabram. Erica Thesson.
Hello, I'm here.
Erica, there you are. Hey, Erica, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Good. Juan Carlos Fallier.
Here.
Hey, Juan Carlos. And Mary Walston.
Here.
Hey, Mary. So let the record show for now. Is there a minutes recorder or however we're recording this? Staff, someone help me. Well, for all of us to recognize that as of right now, Laurel O'Rourke is not here yet and Martina Shabram is excused. And hopefully Laurel will be on soon and then we can add her in. So moving to number 2, agenda review. So there's a slightly changed agenda that we had today from last week. I had a couple of things here, but as you can see what we have, we still have the items for information, obviously items raised by audience first, and then items for information from staff, an update on the 5-year forecast, a reminder of our statutory responsibilities of the budget committee. And then as part of our discussion, which goes along as we hear things sometimes as well, but also one thing we definitely wanted to include was discussing community engagement and developing spending plans. And that's, as you can see from the italics, sort of a way to increase, obviously our roles here as elected officials and lay people are to present hopefully what the public is looking for and what they've asked us and people we encounter with, but this would be an additional way to try to engage people. And then after that would be to review our upcoming meeting schedule and then wrap up, again, items raised by committee members. So that's where we have our say and agenda items for next meeting and then adjourning. Does anyone have any requests, changes, thoughts for the agenda review? Alicia.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to need to leave around 7:30, depending. Got another meeting. And Judy wants to say, yeah, go, Alicia.
No, I want to say the same thing. I thought the meeting was over at 7:30, so I have to go too.
Well, if we do lose 2 and we don't have 2, do we still have a quorum? Let me think. That'd be 4 out of 14.
Yes, yes,
yeah, we
you
would.
do.
Okay. Well, let's move on. Thank you for you two for that. And items raised by the audience.
Josh, Juan Carlos is his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see. Let's see if I can fix my screen so I can see more people. Juan Carlos, go ahead.
So yeah, on the agenda, we are going to be moving everything down to the bottom to have a much richer discussion. Thank you for taking that on. And so on that change on just moving it down on the agenda, and items from the, I think you titled it items from the committee.
Oh, under 5, Roman numeral 5, letter A, items raised by committee members.
Right, I believe that needs to be not only items raised by committee members, but also request for information as well. And those two need to be together, otherwise it kind of gets lost in the process. If you don't mind adding that in,
Sure.
that's an ongoing. Thank
I
you.
think with everyone's permission, or rather without hearing objection, let me say it that way. I will add in as part of 5A, the items raised by us committee members and also any requests for information that we have. Great. I don't see any hands, although I still can't see everybody. But I think, let me just go through. I think we're good. Let us move on to items raised by the audience. This is the public comment section. Let me read this. That the budget committee, receives written comments by email at budget_comm@4j.lane.edu. And we set a time aside in each budget committee meeting to hear public comment. That is this time now. Community members can sign up to speak to the budget committee by submitting their request online at 4j.lane.edu/board/public comment. That's on the web, or by contacting the superintendent's office. The deadline is noon on Monday before each meeting, which we have on Mondays at 6. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes and cannot give their time to another speaker. A timekeeper will show a sign when the speaker has 30 seconds left and when their time is up. And even though we've been doing this on Zoom for 2 years, someone remind me, is there a timekeeper staff? Someone?
Yes.
Someone said yes, that's good. Hopefully that is the timekeeper.
So Josh, do you see
Yes.
where the blue sky timer on the screen?
Oh,
That'll-
I do have that on mine.
Yeah, it'll start at 3 minutes and count down.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're
So
welcome.
we have a timer that will appear on the screen. We have 5 people who have requested to speak tonight with 3 minutes each. The first who is coming in as a panelist now is Chelsea Hardrath, and she'll be followed by Danielle Bowerman.
Let me just say one thing. Thank you, Carrie. Before Chelsea comes in, which is that speakers may offer objective comments or criticism about district operations and programs, but for complaints about individuals, the district has a board policy and complaint process. And in those cases, please contact the superintendent's office at 541-790-7706 for more information about submitting a formal complaint. Tonight, as Carrie said, we have 5 people. The first, again, Chelsea, and I'm sorry, I forgot your last name already. Carrie, help me for a minute while we find Chelsea.
This is Chelsea Hardrath coming in. Her video is on, and Chelsea will begin your 3 minutes now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm at work, so I'm gonna cover up while I do this. Good afternoon, and thank you. I took a peek at the budget bundle, and it's massive, so quite an undertaking. I wanted to talk today about certified teacher librarians and equitable funding and support for all our schools and OBOB. As a volunteer parent, I volunteered for about 5 years in my students' elementary school. I volunteered 1 year in a middle school and 1 year, well, actually 2 middle schools. Each of those were vastly run differently. The elementary school was all parent run. All parents did everything in that elementary school, from order books, cover books, shelve. The middle school that I volunteered in was a classified person that had a little bit of FTE, but had never had any library experience to run a library. The third middle school I ran, or I volunteered in, was a middle school that had a classified person that had been doing this role for many years and was very proficient, and also ran the OBOB program. 3 schools, 3 vastly different ways that their libraries were run. And so when we started into the process with volunteers, we discovered that the library in elementary school had about 20,000 library books. At the time, $15 per library book, we discovered we had about a $300,000 asset that was being unmanaged. So I would encourage the school district to look at their budget and see if they can survive or support certified teacher librarians so that these assets could be managed. We don't buy school buses and have them run by parent volunteers. We have them managed by individuals that are proficient in running buses. Let's see. Also OBOB. So in my parent run volunteer, it was a volunteer run. Some years we had OBOB, some years that we didn't. If we had a certified teacher librarian in all of our schools, it would support teachers' time away from their job. They could actually bring students into the library. Currently, as a parent volunteer, I can't watch kids. I'm not staff. This gives teachers opportunities to take breaks, have prep time, so many other things. There's an adage that says, people will respect what you inspect. So I would strongly encourage, or it'd be my wish and dream, that the school district would really inspect 4J libraries and see the vast differences. Thank you for your time. I'll finish with the email because I have more to say. But thank
That
you.
was a 30-second mark, Chelsea. If
Oh,
you
30
have
seconds.
22 more seconds, yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see, where else I want to tell you guys. There's so many things. Oh, so like in my parent run, so having an FTE directed to the school, the administrator can direct that. However, in my elementary school, it was closed in March of 2020 and just didn't open until January of 2022. Okay, now, thank you. I'll email with.
Great. Yes, thank you. And just one comment based on what she just said too, that people also can email the budget committee directly, even if you're not speaking tonight. So thank you again, Chelsea, for your comments. And Carrie, who is the second of the 5 speakers, please?
Thank you. Danielle Bowerman is the next speaker and will be coming in with video right there. Thank you. She'll be followed by Sheila Wagner.
Great. And Danielle, let me say right before you start, there is a timer, as you can see, it dings at the 30-second mark and then again at the 0 mark. And if you're ready, Danielle Bowerman, it's yours.
Hi. I have a very similar story to what Chelsea just shared. I have spent a few years in volunteering in an all volunteer run elementary school library and a couple of years in a middle school library with an EA who'd been there for a long time. And I agree with everything that she said about the difference between the way that the libraries were run and the access that the students have, and the asset that having a librarian or a full-time library staff has on for teachers. So I'm here to ask that you consider certified librarians first and fill in if there is money for or just for teachers in the library. And then, with EAs in ideally every school, especially elementary schools, it's a really important hub of the school, as we all know. And of course, we'd all love to have teacher librarians in every school, but keeping every school covered with someone who's there all the time will have a huge impact for everyone. I would also like to throw in that if it can be managed, that 4J can continue with paid lunches for all students. I think that would, I know that it's impacted my family and many other kids. It allows a lot of flexibility and nourishment for the kids and their schedules and for their bellies throughout the day. And breakfast also would be really great. If one has to drop, I think keeping lunches for everyone would be really wonderful. And my third topic, which is definitely lower tier, but related to food and cafeterias. I remember talking with the site council at the school where I was volunteering about possibly bringing in an acoustic engineer to look at the school cafeteria and possibly talk about hanging some baffle panels, like they have in a public swimming pool to reduce echoing. I think that would have an impact on kids and their mealtime. So I'm done. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle, for your public comment. Really appreciate it. Carrie, next is Sheila Wagner, and then Carrie, who's after her?
That's right. We have Sheila Wagner coming on video now, and she'll be followed by Catherine Tagworker, and the fifth and final speaker is Melanie Namkung.
Great. And Sheila, just to let you know that the blue sky timer, if you can see that on your screen, will ding at 30 seconds, and then again when you're at 0. So you have 3 minutes. And please start.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Sheila Wagner, and I am the OSCA Eugene Chapter 1 President, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak. What I want to talk about is our classified employees. And these are the most unnoticed employees that make our schools work, right? And they include the bus drivers that give their children their first hello of the day and transport them to safely to school and from school. These are the caring, creative people in the cafeteria that prepare healthy meals and serve them to our children. Just like the last lady was talking about, that's very important. And I believe after me, Kathy Tagworker is going to give you information about those food service workers too. This is also the hardworking custodians, grounds, and facilities workers that keep our campuses clean and in good repair. And you will probably be hearing from a custodian in the future also. These are the multitasking secretaries, office managers, and clerical staff that manage pretty much everything that makes the schools run. They're also the technology department, the wizards in the technology department that make all of the tech, that work with all of us and do it with patience and grace. They are the caring educational assistants that watch, play, and teach and support our students from the moment they set foot on the campuses, at lunch, at recess, in the classroom. Many of our EAs or special ed EAs set up, they step up to carry a classroom when like a new substitute teacher comes in and is unfamiliar with the students in that classroom. Children learn all day long, and we know that we are all educators. We are the people that give a kind word to the students, that urge them to try, that get them the Band-Aid or the small bag of ice for their boo-boos. We hold ourselves to a high standard of professionalism because we must always set good examples to the students. One of our EAs, I gotta talk fast. One of our EAs told me, she said, my job satisfaction comes when I get to hear the children's stories and jokes, or when helps tie their shoes, or when a child gives them a handmade gift. The child, she said, this child honors me because I am one of the trusted grown-ups in their life. Classified employees have wonderful jobs because we are part of something great. Oh, rats, I ran out. Anyway, we're part of something great, and we're not just laborers, we're 4J classified employees that take care of the children and encourage them throughout the day. Thank you so much. And Alicia, you had me giggling with that buzzing up the background thing. I just tried that yesterday. So thank you for that. That helped.
Great. Thank you, Sheila. Appreciate it. Next up is Catherine Tagworker, and then followed by Melody, who would be the 5th.
That's right. We do have Catherine Tagworker slated as our next panelist, having a little trouble with bringing her in. So please bear with us for a moment, and then she'll be followed by Melanie as the last. And Catherine is in now. Kathy, you can start your video and sound now, and we'll start the timer.
And just let you know, at 30 seconds, the timer will ding, and then at 0 to Catherine. Kathy, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kathy Tagworker. I've worked for the school district as a lunch lady for 34 years, and I've loved every year that I do this. I feel it's very important to feed the children. There are several children in our district that don't get the nutrition at home, and they do get it at school. And it's very important that I feel my fellow lunch ladies and lunch gentlemen are there to provide the food for them. 2 years ago, when we had the pandemic, food service kept working. A lot of the school employees went home, but the food service people were there working. We've served thousands and thousands and thousands of children food. And if we weren't there to provide for these children, I don't know what would happen. The fall of 2021, we are short on employees. The district, I believe it was 6 elementary schools, they closed the kitchens because we didn't have enough staff to staff the bigger schools. And the food was brought in from another school to these kitchens. So they did get fed. But like I was taken out of my school, which I threw a fit, but it didn't change. Okay, Sydney knows me, so she knows what that means. And the kids miss their own cooks. We're short on staff. I had to be off for 2 weeks, and the person who came in to cover for me was only there 2 or 3 hours a day, which I have an 8-hour shift. And if any of you have fixed dinners, you know you need to be there at a certain time to get things ready. And we're having a hard time finding people. The food service workers substitute starts at $12.75 an hour. Very low. You can go to the outside fast businesses and they will pay more than that. $14 to $17 to start off working. And since I'm talking money now, the longevity in our salary schedules need to be changed. I've been on longevity for years. I worked 34 years. Now I'm making $20.31 or 21 cents an hour because I was stuck at longevity. So I hope you take a look at the salary schedule for all employees, classified employees. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. I see one hand up. Before we move to the 5th, Mary? Yeah.
Oh, go ahead and have the 5th speaker speak. I just wanted to comment on what Catherine said.
Okay, after the 5th speaker, then we'll circle back. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
it's-
If that's right. 5th speaker then, Carrie, I believe is Melody or Melanie? I'm sorry.
Melanie Namkun.
Melanie, perfect. And Melanie, oh, there you are. Awesome. And you'll hear a ding at 30 seconds left and then at 0. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think I want to talk to the broader point of the document you're going to be reviewing tonight. I hope that is what was attached with the original invitation to speak, saying that it was speaking specifically to Goal 5, stable, sustainable stewardship. If you're only looking at that as a bottom line financial stability, you're losing every bit of your human investment. There are so many classified, I'm a member of OSEA Chapter 1, and there's so many classified staff who have left in the last 2 years because of the difficulty in working in the environment we've had to work in, the changes we've had to deal with, having to work outside of their job assignments just to keep the schools running, and having, frankly, better opportunities elsewhere in neighboring districts. And we've lost so much of our really skilled people who have a lot of knowledge about the district, have a lot of knowledge about their specific schools. And looking at the budget that you had written out, it looked like you're anticipating some enrollment increase. It looks like you are expecting to increase teaching staff by about 1.6, 1.8% each year, fairly similar for classified staff with a drop in that last year. I'm not quite sure why that is, but we are not sufficiently staffed now. If you're only expecting to increase staffing to match the increase in enrollment, that is not going to do it. We do not have enough people working in classified staffing now. When we have people who are out sick for any reason, it takes 3 days before we will get a sub. And in that time, there are multiple people who have to cover for the work that is not being done by that person who's out. And there's many, many different reasons, but without sufficient staffing now, we can't possibly get to where we are providing the appropriate climate environment support for the staff and students at our schools.
Right under the bell. Thank you, Melanie, for your comment. Mary, you had your hand up.
This is more of a point of personal privilege. I just wanted to shout out to Catherine and all the nutrition services employees. I had the privilege of volunteering at Adams while their nutrition staff was reassigned from the beginning of the year until after winter break. And then since winter break, there has been 1.5 staff there, but I'm augmenting there a couple days a week, helping serve lunch and washing dishes. So I feel like I'm an honorary lunch lady, and I got called that today. Thank you, lunch lady. And that just made me feel really good. And I appreciate the hard work that the nutrition services staff does, and call them out for that as much as I can and thank them. In fact, last year, Lane Council of Governments, and Josh will know this, awarded them an extraordinary services as public employees. So that's all I wanted to say. Just shout out to our nutrition staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see a hand up from Juan Carlos, but let me first say, since Mary mentioned, I do work as HR manager at Lane Council of Governments. I always want to say that the 35 member governments that make up the agency on the board include 4J, and there's a 4J rep on our board, but that my work here, which happens to be Mary, but they appoint the executive director, and the work I am doing in my job at LCOG is separate from and not influenced by my work here, volunteer work here on the budget committee. I always like to disclose that, even though there is not a conflict, just so people will know. Juan Carlos, go ahead.
Thank you. Since you said that, Mr. Chairman, I'm also here on my own, as probably some of you guys know. My employer is the U.S. government as well. I think this is a time where we respond to the presenters or the public input. Hopefully that's appropriate now. But real quickly, I mean, we keep on the last meeting and this meeting, we have heard from people talking about the librarians. This is the first time I've heard about certified teacher librarians. Just to put the questions out there, and just for if the board already knows, I don't know, I'm interested. Did we ever have all the positions filled for the libraries in our schools? It'll be a great idea to have like a state of the libraries in all of our schools to get a better idea, again, as it relates to the budget, which is what we're trying to accomplish. And secondly, I did also have curiosity to know over the last 5 years, specifically the last 2 years, what's been the turnover, people leaving positions like classified teachers. And I'm saying now in terms of how that affected budget and retrained and resources. I think I'm glad that people are coming to talk to us and express their support for that. But at the same time, I'm also learning quite a bit in terms of the impact. In fact, the stories, yeah, and you're right that the previous speaker talked about that some of our children, our students, the only trusted adult they might be at school. And so keep that in mind, even though they bring a message, they're also bringing stories for us to consider as far as the work they do. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. I see one more hand. Here's what I think I would like to suggest. There's not a formal time for us to respond to those items raised, but certainly Mary and Juan Carlos, and I want to take the privilege as chair to recognize Erica, and then maybe after Erica, we can go on to the other parts of the agenda, and certainly these things that have been brought up by people to this point, members of the committee, I'm sure we could talk more as we go through. So I'm just trying to keep us on task as much as we can. But Erica, go ahead.
I just really appreciated all the speakers, and I did want to concur that we, the certified librarians in the libraries has been a discussion for a long time, and we definitely need to address it. One of the things is I realized that certified librarians help students with things like learning media literacy, which right now is extremely important for students to be able to get skills, to be able to find factual information. But also I'm so glad to hear about people talking about the free meals. I think that that's life-changing for children. And I really did want to speak up, and I had never thought about this before. I'm the mom of an autistic student, and school cafeterias and the echo is extremely overwhelming. And so that was great. It would be, I don't think we have exact numbers, but many of the students in our school district are neurodivergent, and being able to make those lunchrooms less loud would be like life-changing, because some of these kids don't eat because it's so loud. I mean, I speak from my own child in that instance. So anyways, thank you to all the speakers. They were all awesome. Thank you.
And again, thank you, Erica. And I just want to again say to anyone in the public who's listening to this or watching this, that remember, you can reach out to the budget committee through 4J, through the website, through calling the superintendent's office, or submitting public comment. Let's move on with the agenda to number 4, items for information. Erica, put your hand down if you can. Otherwise, I'll keep calling on you. It's okay. Thank you. And what we have first is the update on the 5-year forecast. So Andrea Bells from Finance Director of Finance at 4J, if you are ready. Let me see.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Excellent. Yep.
Wonderful.
So,
I'm not wearing my headset tonight, so I want to make sure everybody can hear me.
this is good. Yeah, we can. Go ahead. Thank you for being here.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see the slide that says financial update? Are we good? Good. Okay, so first off tonight, we're going to revisit the 5-year forecast. So you all saw that on January 24th. And there were some areas of the forecast that when we discussed it back then were still unknown. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of those areas and what we've learned since then. So looking from January to February, I know it's only 1 month, but a lot can happen in a month. Looking at the state school fund, we have not changed our future forecast for the state school fund appropriation growth. But what we have learned from discussions with the individuals who are our representatives up with the legislature is that contrary to our original understanding, where we thought the 6% increase in appropriation in the 2023-25 and the 25-27 bienniums were conservative, that may be actually a very optimistic viewpoint. We are hearing that the legislature feels that we have received quite a bit of funding through SIA, the Student Investment Account, and other sources, and that they may be looking to take additional dollars that are coming into their coffers and point them in other areas that are in desperate need of funding. So we have continued to hope that we will see at least a 6% increase there, but we are recognizing that we will have to monitor this closely to make sure that we take this into account if we do hear information that more solidly gives us a percentage increase for the next biennium. Looking down to our PERS rate increase, we've talked about this quite a bit, but I believe this is the first time we've discussed it with the budget committee. In our original forecast in January, we had estimated a 3% increase, 3 percentage point increase in our PERS rate going into the 2023-25 biennium. We had based that on the preliminary report received from PERS that indicated this was a likely increase. However, since that time, the PERS board has actually met. They have received information on the investment returns for the PERS portfolio for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2021. And we're happy to report that those investment returns were over 20%, well above the the percentage that is required on an ongoing basis. What they expect is that this will reduce the unfunded liability, basically the large dollar amount out there that represents what we owe to our future retirees, by about $8 billion. Sounds like a big number, but it is a very large number out there. But what that looks like for us is, instead of a probable 3 percentage point increase in 2023-24, we're looking at something closer to a 1% increase. So just remembering that about for every 1%, we're talking about $1 million. That helps us looking forward in our funding picture. Also, looking forward, in January, we had not yet achieved a tentative agreement with our licensed folks, EEA. I believe that today our licensed union will be looking to ratify the tentative agreement reached by the district and the negotiating team there. And that tentative agreement includes a 4% per year COLA for this year and the next 2 years. You'll see here that what we've noted for OSEA and MAPS is a note that says equivalent value. When we negotiate, even though we are only negotiating with one group, we are looking to the whole. We are ensuring that the agreement that we reach we can provide an equivalent value to our other employee groups. It would not be prudent for us to make a deal and not be able to ensure that all of our other employee groups equally benefit from that deal. Now, that doesn't mean that we have, that these groups have gotten together and we have a decision about what that looks like, but we do know a general equivalent value. So looking at our updated February forecast, looking at those numbers, we come in at the same operations and PERS reserves of 53.98 million. Working through to the end of the 5-year forecast, we will expect to have roughly $2.9 million of our PERS reserve remaining, and our full 5% in our ending fund balance. This 5% is required by board policy currently. These two amounts combined are roughly 6.2% of our total revenues, and an amount that is equal to roughly 1 month's payroll. So this amount ensures that we have enough in our coffers to pay 1 month of payroll. And looking at this from a visual perspective, this kind of shows you how we are drawing down on our reserves and bringing those down, as I said, to 6.2% of revenues, or roughly $14.7 million. I'd be happy to pause here for any questions. I'm sorry, I can't see all of you if there's any hands up. Josh, do you have
Sure.
any?
Yeah, I'll start with a question, take the privilege of being chair, and also because I just saw 2 hands, but let me go to others first. It's only fair. Gordon, I saw your hand first, and then Anne, and then I'll put myself third after that.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. I don't know if this is too soon to say anything about it, but OSB, the Oregon School Boards Association, put out a statement today saying that legislative leadership has decided to add $275 million to K-12 funding, mostly for summer programs and staff recruitment and retention. And I wondered if you have any even rough estimate about how much of that might be coming to 4J and how that could impact any of this picture.
Definitely take a shot at it, Gordon. So I've been part of the legislative committee. It's a group of school district financial folks who connect up and hear about possible new legislation. So we've discussed both of these areas. What we're looking at for the summer school program is roughly the same, the same amount of funding that we saw last year. There will likely be a match again. So we will likely see the need to use carryover SIA funding and high school success dollars to match out. There will also, we expect, be a childcare component as there was last summer. One thing to remember is that we couldn't spend all of the money that was out there. The school districts just didn't have a long enough runway to spend all of the $200 million that was available to us in the last summer. I mean, people did a really, bang up job, but I think the legislature is looking to get this out to us earlier this year so that we have the ability to begin our planning well ahead of time, know what the requirements are, and make sure that we can do everything possible to take every dollar we can get our hands on and get it out there to take care of kids in the summer. So they're taking some money that they got back from us, about $100 million, and they are putting that in and adding a little more, I believe, to make sure that we have another great summer. And I know here we're already planning for summer activity. So I'm really excited about some of the opportunities.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
And looking at the retention, what we haven't heard a lot yet, but one of the things that I do believe will come into that may be a need component. So it may not be a balanced, everyone gets a piece of it. It could be basically looking to certain factors such as some of our more rural districts that have a harder time recruiting certain positions, as well as I know that there's extra funding going out to our school districts who were impacted by the fires. That was really a high priority for OASBO, the school district finance folks, to make sure that those districts were taken care of because they were so heavily impacted by our fires and to this day are still rebuilding. So I'm sure we'll see more information on both coming up, but I would expect us to have another robust summer program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon, for the question. Andrea, my apologies for interrupting you before you were done. There was a second part to that question. Anne, you're next, and then I have myself on the list after that.
Let's see, Andrea, I have a question about the ending fund balance dropped quite a bit. Does it give you concern about, I assume that how much reserve we have affects our ability to bond and the interest rate we get there? Does this low portion give you any concern in that department?
So of course, you always want to ensure that you have sufficient reserves to, cover your basic needs. In this case, I believe that, one of the reasons that reserves are there, of course, is for our bond rating, but also to take care of our people when we have a rainy day, you might say, and it's been raining a lot. So no, in this case, I believe that, as long as our reserves do not drop below the board mandated level, I am not, terribly concerned.
And that's the 5% minimum?
That would be the 5%. The 6.2 is, like I said, that's 1 month's worth of payroll. I kind of like to have at least that much in my pocket. But yes, I think the goal here was to basically dig deep and ensure that we were doing everything we could to support our staff while still maintaining a sustainable go forward budget and enough reserves to cover our most critical functions.
Great, thank you. My question was kind of in the same mode about the 5%, where the 5% number comes from, but I think you said it's a board. Is there, I recall from the past, there's a best practices kind of idea, and then a board voted on a particular number? Is that how that works?
So there is a policy that states that we will retain a 5% of revenue, just in case you're wondering what that 5% is applied to, 5% of revenue, ending fund balance to allow for sufficient cash flow and to cover basic needs. If we were to propose going below that 5%, we would need board authority. And during the Great Recession, we actually did have situations where we believed we might drop below that 5% and sought the board's approval for an alternative level in the case that that became an issue or a need. So this amount is set as basically unspendable unless we have an emergency. That's how I would describe it. This is our emergency pot to make sure that we can pay everything we need to on our payroll. Josh, did you freeze?
I was frozen.
You are frozen, Josh.
Let me.
There you go.
Oh, can you hear me? Excellent. Sorry, yeah, I couldn't hear what you were saying just now, but I think I'm unfrozen. Everyone else there looks like you're there.
Yep.
Go ahead, Andrea, if you were still.
Oh no, I had stopped. I was waiting in the pause, as they say.
Boy, even embarrassing to chair a meeting and you get frozen. I guess it's technology for us. Before we move on to the next section of the agenda, which is the statutory responsibilities of our committee, let me just see if, as long as I'm not frozen right now, if there's any other hands up. I'm just kind of looking. I don't see any. So let's move on then. Yes, thank you.
Many of you have attended my rather lengthy training sessions and just enjoyed them thoroughly, I know. What I've tried to do here is to really just condense this down to the really important points to remind everybody that at the end of the day, when we're done with all of this, this is what we absolutely have to do as a budget committee. So you have to hold at least one meeting, and that meeting needs to be where the proposed budget for the coming year is presented. That proposed budget must be balanced. We are not allowed to go out and, you might say, finance the next year without approval. Our resources must equal our requirements. If we were to ever be in a situation where that was not the case and some sort of funding was required, that would require board approval to seek that funding. For example, when I was working for the Oregon State Treasury, I was part of the tax anticipation note borrowing team, which allowed governments, both local and state, to borrow for cash flow purposes in waiting for their tax revenue to come in. But any kind of borrowing, any kind of supports would need to be approved by the board. So we have to have a proposed budget. It has to balance our resources against our requirements. The proposed budget also requires a document called the program budget detail. If you look through our budget, it's the long report that has the budget in minute detail by fund, by function, and by account level. It takes a lot of work to put together, but this is the level of reporting required under local budget law. And it must include a superintendent's message. Of course, at this meeting, public testimony must be requested. You must hold a public meeting with public comment. That is required. We do have public comment at every one of our budget committee meetings, but at this meeting, to meet the statutory requirement, you've got to make sure you do that. And finally, the budget committee must move the appropriations, both the general fund and the other funds appropriations, and the tax levies and rates forward to the board before they can take action on that in June. So just a quick one pager. Any questions before I get to the exciting stuff? No? Okay, I'm diving in. So one of the things that I've heard ever since I came to 4J was that the budget committee always felt like they came in at the end. You know, you've already made all of, you've done all this work, you've made all these decisions, and now we're just hearing about it, but we don't really have the ability to be a part of the process and add our voice and ensure that the voice of the individuals that we talk to on a regular basis, represent, work with, that those voices are also heard. So I am bringing something to the budget committee that's a little different than what the budget committee has ever done before. And that's talking about involving this group in looking to the future and helping us as we digest new guidance from the Oregon Department of Education, which is titled here, Aligning for Student Success, Integrated Guidance for 6 ODE Initiatives. So ODE has been working on this guidance for 2 years now. One of the things that they heard loud and clear is that it is important to reduce the workload on districts for things like the student investment account and high school success. Each one of these programs have their own set of budgeting rules and reporting rules and compliance rules. And it was getting very hard for people to keep up with all the different rules. They also wanted to bring these 6 initiatives, and I will move us to the next slide. They wanted to bring these 6 initiatives together with the idea that if we combine, you might say combine forces, that good things will come out of it. There will be a more consistent approach to what we seek to advance, that we can combine this funding to make big changes in what we're doing and focus all of these resources where they're needed most. And basically to also build in some things like equity-based decision-making, not just something that folks say we'd like to, but no, this is required. So looking at the programs that this new guidance will address, we have high school success, Measure 98, for anyone who remembers that clear back when it first came into being, which is focused on, of course, our grades 9 through 12, and getting, focused on things like career and technical education and attendance, all the things that we need to do to get our students successfully to their diploma. Then we have student investment account. This is part of the, the funding coming from the corporate activity tax dollars. And the student investment account, which for next year is going to be over $13 million, is focused based on basically based on community engagement. And they're looking to kind of broaden out that direction and that way of thinking to these other areas, including continuous improvement planning. Basically, how do we get better every year? Career and technical education. So this is our Perkins grants and the money that goes out to help strengthen those programs. Everyday Matters, which is attendance and focusing on getting kids in class. Because as we know, if kids are in class, they have a much better chance of learning than if they're somewhere else. So focusing those resources, and then early indicator and intervention systems. So each one of these areas has a short explanation within the document that we saw on the previous slide. And I will be sending that document out to everyone in a PDF, just so that you can see. It's a lengthy document, but there is some great work that has been done by ODE. They've listened to a lot of input and they've tried to create a new process that has the common elements of authentic engagement. So really having a systematic and consistent engagement process across all of these areas, all of these grants, an equity-based decision-making process. This process requires the use of an equity tool. It is no longer an option. This is a requirement. Focus on students who have been historically marginalized by the education system. We saw that as a great focus of student investment account, but bringing that into clear design here. Completing a comprehensive needs assessment for this area, and then looking at this from the viewpoint of a continuous improvement cycle. How do we take all of this and get better and better with what we do? Common goals, of course, are a well-rounded education, advancing equity within our schools, engaging the community on a regular and consistent basis, and strengthening our systems and our capacity. So it looks like, Juan Carlos, I see a hand.
Thank you for, this is such a great way to see organized and kind of pops up in terms of the goals that you guys have been talking about. And this is not an easy thing to put together, I know. But I did have a question. I mean, you put all those programs, I don't know if you put them by priority or first thing, because sometimes depending on who's talking or who's looking at things, might want to do, for example, a comprehensive needs assessment before you begin to think about other things. So I don't know if this is just the way it was put together. It'll be good to see what comes as a baseline, because students have to be ready to learn, as Dr. Golden, Nancy Golden used to say in the Springfield School District. But what I wanted to ask you is, you talked about it, you talked before, the district keeps on talking about the equity tool and the equity lens. And I understand you have such a tool, but I don't know whether and how, or basically how and when do you refine that tool to actually reflect what's really going on with the community? Because just putting it there doesn't seem like there's this operated so often. So I'd like to get your take on that. And finally, is all of this measured by specific years? Is there a plan to say we're going to revisit the effectiveness of these plans and elements and goals in about 3 years or 5 years, or this is just ongoing thing, see how it goes?
Well, start out, they're not in any order of priority. They're just listed, equally here. This is a program that has been developed by the Oregon Department of Education. So we didn't, you might say, we didn't pick the priority or any of the other areas here, but we do have a very extensive document that talks about all of these things and will help us. We'll be receiving training on this in the spring. And the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what this is going to look like, stepping through all of the various processes within this directive. I was hoping, Maya, could you possibly talk to our equity tool?
I'm not sure if I can answer that question. I think we're still in the process as a board of figuring it out. But I actually wrote down your question, Juan Carlos, because I think it's very important. And I appreciate that the budget committee is asking such a question. My answer as an individual board member, without having discussed it with the board, is that, and I'm looking at Alicia, who's also on the equity committee team formation, is that this absolutely should be done using our equity tool. So having you ask that question and express that interest gives us more leverage to making sure that that happens and holds us accountable as well. So I appreciate that. And I see that Sydney raised her hand, so maybe she has some.
Yeah, I was going to say I have on the list Tom and then Judy, but Sydney, if you as superintendent have some more information, maybe that would help answer some questions. So with Tom and Judy's understanding, let me ask you to speak first, Sydney.
Okay, I think I can do it quickly, but when we go out into the public and gain information like what the community feels like we should spend the money towards, I think once we get those, I'm picturing like we did it last time. I don't know if we'll be in person or not, but having ways that when we ask the question, it includes the equity lens within the question. So if we're out visiting and asking the public if we could use the two that we just heard today, a library or free cafeteria, which one is the one that helps maybe more kids or helps kids who need it most, or whatever that looks like. So when we make our decisions on how we spend this money right here, I think that it should be embedded in the way that we ask the question to the community. But again, the board could disagree with that idea and we could do it differently. I just think if we embed it in what we're doing, then it's bringing it to everyone's attention while we make the decisions.
Thank you. I think that helps. If I may go to Tom next and then Judy, and then I'll add myself. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, did you have a response to that since it was your question?
I don't have a response. It wasn't my question. Andrea just lobbed it to me, which I appreciate. But I have a connected question slash hope that I want to express, and that is we're really close to having our equity committee that's newly forming finalized and ready to hit the ground. And I know that when SIA stuff first came out, the equity committee, I was a member, but not as a board member, just as a community member. We definitely spent some time discussing it within that context. And I'm hoping that 4J does that regardless. But Andrea, I'm wondering, is ODE, these newly revamped equity committees are state mandated. I'm wondering if ODE is also incorporating direction for districts, not just 4J, but at large, to make sure that that is included in this next round of I'll use the word processing for lack of a better word.
We actually, in about 2 slides, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And they have provided us with, you might say, a roadmap that will help us work through this process and understand it. And they do allow, us to use our own equity tool. They provide the option to use ODE's tool if the school district does not have one, but do offer that we can use our own tool in this process. So they're trying to provide a structure that we can use to work through this, but also giving us the ability to customize to our needs and what our district really wants to accomplish with this.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah. Tom, if I may turn to you now, thanks for your patience. And then I have Judy and then me and then Juan Carlos.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple notes to bring to the committee tonight. And this, when I saw community engagement, and that's really why I think we're all here. And that was one of the questions when we signed up for this. And I have a couple things I wanted to say that'll take maybe a minute or two, but I can wait till later. I'm glad that this is all put together neatly in a slide, and there are more details and explanations to follow. But I had a suggestion, or just a warning that we don't forget a couple things about waiting for ODE to tell us what their plan is and we adopt it or not, but that we have things that are on the ground already. We have expertise in our buildings and in our regions already that I think we can utilize. And I can wait and talk about that later when we have more time later. I think it's number 4, or maybe it's later in the evening, but I just wanted to make sure that this doesn't get lost in the mix, that we have expertise, senior staff and people in buildings and in regions that do a wonderful job, and we just need to harness the right people in the right places to do a better job of community engagement. Because I think most of us would agree that that's the reason why we're here. So I'll hold the rest for later.
Great, thank you, Tom. Judy, and then me, and then Juan Carlos, and then maybe we'll continue back to the slides.
Well, I originally had put my hand up because I had a comment about the equity lens, but I think my fellow board members have definitely covered that. I think this is absolutely where we should be using it, and the board will bump that up as a sooner rather than later conversation about how to apply it. But I just wanted to comment, I'm actually very thrilled. This is something I've been wanting to see for a long time, to see all 6 of these funding streams, instead of having separate processes that sometimes are duplicative and we're asking the same people, bringing them together in a way I believe is going to really help our district focus more clearly, and also utilizing our funds and our funds more efficiently. So I'm just really excited about seeing it presented in this way.
Great, thank you. I'll go next, then Juan Carlos. I just had a couple of quick comments. One is I've been on this budget committee longer than I think at least the other lay people on. There may be, I think Alicia's been on longer, and but I remember having discussions, and it's hard to remember when this was. The pandemic was so somewhere before the pandemic, but once I got on this committee, which was maybe somewhere between 2 and 6 years ago, I guess. But I remember having discussions around this and around the needs assessment and the idea of in budget committee, I mean, not just at the board, but us as a budget committee discussing ways of being able to and asking staff and the superintendent at the time, Dr. Balderas, how can we make sure that part of what we're looking at is where there's greater need? And so I'm really glad to see, I mean, I think our district has been doing this longer and better for a long time, but obviously we can do better and longer as well. But for ODE to come out now and say a lot of this for the whole state just makes me proud to be an Oregonian and not just a 4J person. Second quick comment is, when we were talking about public engagement, I remember, and it was my oldest who was at North Eugene High School at the time, and now she's a sophomore in college. So this was at least 2 years ago, again, probably before the pandemic, because yeah, we were in person at different schools around the district, and we would be writing out, hearing presentations and then writing out things that were important to us, both as parents and other community members who turned out, but also students. And I think that's one important thing I want to say. She went because she cared. She was a high school student. She followed stuff. She would engage in debates with me. She would tell me what I should be doing on this committee, things like that. For those who know my oldest, you understand it. But I think students, very important to remember students, whatever we do, I mean, as a committee, but more generally as a district in this regard, make sure we have a student voice. And then finally, one other quick comment, and then Juan Carlos, Tom, I liked what you said about community engagement. I know we've seen that words here too, but you brought it out verbally. And one thing I always want to remind us here, and I know people said this before, but don't forget who's not at this meeting. Those of us who are either elected or appointed have the time, the ability, the technology to sit here on Zoom now, or if we were in person, to go to a place and be in person. Mike, there's so much I can say. I have kids, we live in the Churchill district. My oldest went to North. That was our choice and her choice. I will say carefully that I had more than one person in this district say to me, why, which I was very offended by. And one person who said to me, oh, how noble of you, because we present as middle-class white. And I'm not trying to, well, I'll stop there. This is probably too controversial, but I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. I will also say my kids were at ATA, when it was before free lunch for everyone. They had it there for people because it was Title I or close to Title I school. I can't remember, CEP or whatever. I can't remember the acronym now. My kids have friends. I have friends who are not at this meeting tonight because they can't be, because they're too busy struggling as a single parent, making sure their kids have food to eat at home and getting ready for their next job, and so, or the next day at work. So I just want us to remember, as we talk about community engagement, who's not here, and that our part of our job, whether we're elected or appointed, is to make sure that they are included, or at least their concerns and needs for their kids are included. Juan Carlos, go ahead.
Thank you for saying that, Josh. And I think it's important that voices like yours and the rest of you consider, in fact, bringing those stories without regard to how you come across, regardless of, you say white person, doesn't matter. Bring your stories forward, because you're gonna find that we have a lot of things in common. In fact, you're gonna find that, oh yeah, this person is speaking to my experience as a person of color. So keep that in mind. Now, in regards to the tool, I'm so glad you're working on the equity tool. I think it's important because it's gonna be dictating moving forward. It's gonna dictate how we engage the communities within our schools. But I highly encourage you to schedule a review of such tool at least every 3 years, because you're gonna see that you're gonna get stagnant on the tool that you think you're using, and then pretty much this is not even applicable to the generations or how the population is changing. So keep that in mind. These six streams, as well, I've seen these the blurry in the past. Like people talked about this back to Dr. Shelley before Dr. Valderas, and here and there, sprinkle here and all that. But to actually see not only all separate but clear, but also this time around, hopefully will be actually funded. That's really what I'm looking for. This is why I brought up the conversation. Budget-wise, what does that mean? These are beautiful six plans, the 6 initiatives, and the elements and the goals. But are you going to put money behind it? Are you going to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, with all the respect? So I'm glad to see that finally. And then in community engagement, please be aware if you don't, and if you already know it, I'm just happy to say it again, I don't mind. But community engagement does not mean that people come to us. It doesn't mean that they come to us. It means that we go out there to actually connect with them. And then we have to be creative. Once we get to that section, we have to be creative in how we actually secure, as Josh said before. So also hold that for later. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Juan Carlos. And I think before we move on to the next slide, I just want to say that Laurel O'Rourke is here. So welcome, Laurel. Thank you for being here. And with that, let me just say, unless anyone has anything more, I'm looking through the comments. Andrea, continue with the slides then.
Okay. So this next slide is kind of giving us an idea of what the timeline in a way for what we are looking at with this new model. And something I want to remind folks about, ODE has, you might say ODE has given us the stage and some basic, direction, but it's up to us to make this a valuable and, really productive process. I don't think anyone wants to just go through the motions, just meet the minimum. We want to use this as an opportunity to do some things that will really help us take the next step. So the part that we're really looking at right now, we're right at the beginning with organizing our thinking and our planning. So what this involves is, of course, reviewing the guidance. And if you decide to go down this path with us, I've got some homework for everybody to read through what ODE has set out as parameters or thought, processes for community engagement. Then it asks us to review our previous self-assessments and to look at getting the right people engaged as a planning team, as advisory, folks like you, or small work groups. Basically, the idea is let's get ready. Let's get everything in place so that we can start down this path and be successful. And the second step here, and these things are both happening in the spring. So we are, we're right here getting ready to learn about this new process, to get ready to dive in and do things like engage our community, complete our comprehensive needs assessment, all of these things. Step 2 is prepare accessible materials in plain language for community and staff engagement, including ways to collect information and the human resources to complete the comprehensive needs assessment. So this is really where it becomes, we know what we've done before. What do we really feel worked? What didn't work? Who did we not get to? How can we make this as robust and effective a process as possible? And all of you have ties in the community. I'm sure you've heard people say, oh, I remember doing this and I really thought this was great, or this just didn't work for me. How do we make this next step in the process work well and really provide great information for us moving forward? The idea being that as we move into the fall, we will be doing a lot of this work. We will be engaging students, staff, and the community. We'll be completing our needs assessment. We'll be working through all of these steps with the plan that at step 12, our 12-step program, as they say, in March of 2023, we will be submitting a new multi-year budget for these 6 funding areas. And with the idea being that this budget is a clear direction for all of these programs going into the next biennium and beyond, to take everything we've got and direct it where our community, our staff, and our students are most in need.
And in the interest of, I just do a time check at 7:16, and I know Judy, I see your hand up, and then Maya, and I know that at least a couple of people need to leave at 7:30. So I don't know if our end time is 7:30 or 8.
I am one slide away.
Okay, you know what? Why don't you, let's do this. Let's Judy and Maya jump in if you could, just because of the time, and then Andrea will get back to the last slide, which as I sneak a look at it, looks towards our next meeting actually, which is good.
Yep.
So Judy, you first, and then Maya.
My original question was, this is due March 2023, so a year from now, correct?
Correct.
And will we know our funding source, how much funding, or will that be dependent on the next legislative session?
So we will have an estimate. We will not have a final number because yes, we will have to wait for the legislative session to conclude to provide the appropriations for all of these, to approve those through the budget process. But we will typically at this point have an estimate provided by ODE for each one of these grant areas.
Maya next, and then Gordon and Juan Carlos.
So I appreciate, I also was wanting to make sure I understood March 2023 is where step 12 needs to be completed by. I'm wondering when these steps 1 and 2 are anticipated to get rolling.
So I would believe that right now we are already beginning this process because it's, as you can see, it's going to be lengthy. It's going to take time to learn the guidance, to do it well, to make sure that we're getting all of the input and ideas that we need to make this effective, so that when we start diving into the community engagement and doing the needs assessment, we're going to come out with a quality product. So this is new. I'm not saying I am anyway an expert, so I'm answering based on my, my first run through with this. We'll all learn a lot more as we go through this, and as we receive training from ODE, as we have opportunity. They're doing listening sessions right now where folks can come in and ask about specific parts of the guidance and get an idea of what, if it's not clear, what's intended, what are they looking at here, and those are all recorded. So we'll begin to attend and also listen to any past guidance to get a start on this and make sure that we are ready to go and hit that mark for March 2023.
Gordon.
I can, unless we're ending right now, I can wait till after Andrea finishes her last slide.
Okay. You know what, let me just say at 7:19, I was thinking this was 6 to 8 because all budget committee meetings have been 2 hours, but I also think it may have been somewhere said 6 to 7. So I think, I know 2 people have to leave at 7:30. My thought is if we have enough people here for an interested in consensus to keep going on past 7:30 and people are able to, let's just keep doing it because discussion is always good. I'm going to look at people to see if they're giving thumbs up or nods or no. I see 1 thumbs up for my vice chair, or our vice chair. He's not just my vice chair. I see some smiles. Let's continue then, and I know we'll lose a couple of folks, but maybe, hold on. I see, actually, you know what? I see Juan Carlos, I'm sorry, Gordon, you said you're gonna hold Juan Carlos and Laurel. We have 1 more slide, Andrea, if you could do that first, and then if I could call on those people, actually reverse, because Laurel hasn't had a chance to speak yet. I'd like to give her that opportunity, and then back to Gordon and Juan Carlos, if that's all right. But maybe finish the slide first, and then we'll go to Laurel, Gordon, Juan Carlos. Thanks.
This will be easy one. So if the budget committee would like to engage and help in kind of looking through this and helping us get a great start for this process, what I would request for the March 14th meeting is that the members of the committee read Appendix A of the guide. This is the community engagement toolkit. So you might say this is the stage that ODE has set, but there's a lot. This is not a cookie cutter, oh, you just go out and do these things and you're done. This is going to take some, some really deep thought and some work to ensure that we are not only, of course, meeting the requirements that ODE has set out for us, that is always an important factor, but also that we are making the most of this. I mean, I always like to say, if you're going to put this much work into something, it should be something that really gets you where you want to go. It shouldn't just be check the boxes. So that would be my ask, that the budget committee read this section of the document and come back with thoughts, with suggestions, with anything that can help bring this discussion along and make this a better product.
Maybe if you could send that out as a link to us.
I will send out the PDF.
Perfect.
Have the entire document, because there may be things within the document that you're really interested in. They have things like a short description of each one of these grants. There's just a lot of really good information, but I think that by reading this section, at least scanning through it, it'll give you some ideas about things you'd like to see us focus on or learn more about. And that is it. I will take down my chair.
Excellent. Laurel, go ahead. Good evening.
Hi, my comment was for slide 13. The term "the right kind of people" is extremely problematic to me. And I would like to see I would like that defined, even if you're trying to just say it quickly, it still needs to be defined quickly. But the right kind of people has a lot of history to it. So let's kind of stay away from that.
Those who don't, it's on towards the bottom, unless you, if you don't have it in front of you, it's towards the bottom. It says, get the right people engaged as a planning team. It goes on from there. So
I think, well, these are ODE's words.
Are these okay?
Yes, these are not ours. I just wanted to, say that. But I think their goal there was not, in their mind, the right, saying kind of people, but rather getting the people involved who have the right combination of skill, experience,
Okay, well, to go further in that, the history of the state is that usually people from higher socioeconomic levels and from higher education levels, which you can't tell I have one right now. And so we don't want that defined by ODE. In our area, I think we want to be very careful about that. And their right kind of people may not be our right kind of people completely. Of course, we can have some educated people. But in reality, I think you always want to say that, because that term has a lot of weight to it, what that means. And I'm not saying that you are coming in here trying to tell me secretly say who the right kind of people are. I'm just saying, when we put this kind of stuff out to the public, I think it's really important that we not just kind of say terms that have a lot of history to them.
And
Thanks.
Laurel, this is Sydney. I'll take a minute and I will write to them and ask them to change that. I think they'll agree with you that I don't know who wrote it or what, but I will let them know. So we'll give them feedback so that the link can change as well.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Gordon and then Juan Carlos. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I wanted to go back for a minute to the issue of librarians, which was raised by a couple of the public speakers. This is something that is critical, especially for early readers, both in one of the districts and boards' long-term goals of improving third grade reading, and also a thing that doesn't necessarily show up on test scores, but the question of, do kids end up liking reading and reading books outside of the things that they're required to read for classes. And Juan Carlos, I think, asked a question about the history, and we did have librarians in every school until sometime in the early 90s after Measure 5, when they started disappearing bit by bit, year by year. And the last elementary school librarian we had left in 2010. So we now have 4 in each of the high schools who try to, I think, take responsibility for things happening in their region, but we have none assigned to middle schools or elementary schools. And I would like to propose that we try to find money to have librarians in 3 elementary schools that would be among the neediest schools. And we had a proposal from librarians that proposed River Road, Camino del Rio, Chavez, and McCornack. I know Howard is one of the most needy schools by Title I metrics, but I think this would be thing, from my point of view, that we would leave to the staff, to senior staff, to figure out which exactly are the right schools by a combination of need or what they know about the schools and where this could work well. But what I'd like to propose is that we fund this in 3 schools and we consider it as a 5-year pilot program. There is both a lot of national research about the great impact of having certified librarians, but there's also a lot of metrics that have been developed, and there are ways to measure this impact. Some of it is test scores and some of it are other things. I know this is something we've heard from librarians. It's something that's been identified as an equity issue. It's also something that I know the Dana Fleming, the chair of the Eugene Education Foundation, raised at, I think, the January Budget Committee meeting. I don't know if her raising that was an implication that EEF might be able to help raise some of the funds that we would need to do this. That would be nice, but what I would like to ask is for us to be able to consider this in this budget, meaning the budget that we have to finalize in May, which happens before all the community engagement process we're talking about next year. If at our next meeting, Andrea or whoever is the right person could come back to us with some suggestions of, if we wanted to do this, what are the places that we might be able to find the money that would be the least disruptive to other operations in the district? Thanks.
Juan Carlos and then Erica.
Thank you. When we talk about community engagement, I go way back to mid-90s, early 2000. And the things that were going on at 4J, the school districts, when they were doing community engagement, they were talking to a person of that community, and then they were done. Oh, we already talked to this person. And then they were done getting the feedback. And I'm seeing that that's slowly kind of changing, bringing stakeholders and people that have an interest in improving our district and our children's education. Laurel earlier mentioned the specific words that raised a flag for me too. Who's the right people? Because in fact, in the past, people have defined that maybe some folks like me think were not the right people. So keep that in mind where that's coming from in our history. I see that across the board in Oregon, there's a very noticeable interest for education. There's no question about it. I don't know a single community in Oregon that would say we're not interested in education. But as we're going to be doing all of these exercises, keep in mind that not every community is the same. There are some areas like up in the Beaverton area and Hillsborough that population demographics is much different than, say, in Springfield. And so you will probably need to be aware of that. I'm also pleased to hear that we're not just adopting the ODE proposal. First I thought it was actually 4J, and I'm glad you clarified that. But if you are going to be engaging people, it's not just that they come to talk to us. I see that as effective. I mean, somebody's proposing to support and find ways to fund specific programs and where it's needed, is much needed. We need to support our kids at the library, in school development. That's great. I think it's important. But is that it? Is that really what it takes? Just people to come in and talk to this group, and then that's how things get done? Because I'll tell you, it's not going to be people like me that will be coming to these meetings. I haven't seen many groups like mine or like where I belong in groups. So that means that, let me connect this on the community engagement. That means that really we have to go out there and engage them That means that there's gonna be mothers that are single, holding 2 jobs, they can't come to talk to us, but they have something to say. That means that we are gonna be willing, and hopefully somebody's taking notes on this. Somebody's gonna be willing to reach out to them, in fact, even record their feedback or how they see this program come to fruition. That means that we're gonna be engaging teachers also, and even students that maybe they're shy for whatever reason, they're not coming to the ivory towers, because I don't mean to offend anyone. That's how it's seen, and I see it sometimes as well. Go out there and secure different ways of participation. So that is not only one, like we've seen tonight and in the past. Nothing wrong with that. Again, I'm just saying, look how things are getting done and how other things are not getting done because it's not being done this way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Erica. You're next, and then Tom.
2 things. I agree with Juan Carlos that we need to improve how we do engagement going out to different regions. And as a single mom working 2 jobs, I would say that the ability to have some sort of an online survey that would be able to be sent out to people through text and through email to get some feedback, I think would be important, because truly there are some people that won't be able to come to meetings or attend. My last thing is I 100% I second what Gordon said about trying to find some money to get librarians in the, I think he said 3, but 3 or 4 most in need schools. All my children attended McCormick, and it is extremely, extremely important. Oh, my child just realized they're on Zoom. But I think that's really important that we do that. And this is not something that's just come up at this meeting today. I mean, the librarian, this has been talked about and going on for well over 3 years. So I think I second what Gordon was saying.
With your permission, I just want to jump in to respond to something you just said, Erica, and then Tom, you'll be next. But no, I agree. One thing in the past that we've had staff present to us on this committee is something like, and this sounds too simplified, I don't mean it this way, but like, what would it cost to do X? Like if we wanted to, reduce the average class size by 1 student, what does that cost? $1 million, or, whatever it is. What does it cost to have well, we used to have furlough days. I mean, well, I've been in this district since 2008. I know some of you have been here longer than that. And you remember furlough days, which thankfully we haven't had, but 1 furlough day would cost X amount. So to some degree, it makes it a little bit easier to look at, although it's too simplified to say that, X number of teacher librarians or X number of schools would be X dollars and where to find, but maybe that's one way staff I know can help us kind of view things. Because, part of our job, of course, is to, I wish we had all the money in the world and we don't. We all wish that, right? So, anyway, that's just a thought. Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things. Throughout my teaching career, I started out, everybody had a licensed librarian. It was a wonderful thing. And I don't think there's anybody who's going to say the opposite of that. And little by little, those were taken away. And I knew many of the librarians, and I taught at the middle school level. We hung on for a little while and then they went away, but I saw just a huge dip in, one, enthusiasm in reading and guidance in literature is what Gordon was talking about. But the second thing that I saw in my classroom was researching skills. Right at the time where kids needed the most the help they needed for researching, to finding out whether these particular sources are dependable, where to go. They really needed more guidance than at any other time in my career. So I whatever we can do, if we can put more licensed people in libraries, I think that would be a wonderful thing. The other things I wanted to talk about were basically community engagement, especially with the Latinx community, the Spanish-speaking community. I know I'm very happy that 4J's made improvements in connecting with folks through better translation, interpretation, and wraparound services. However, I think most of us agree we could do a better job of gathering the input. Not everybody has time or the equipment, which Josh has talked about, to easily use our online services. Sometimes work schedules are different. We don't all read the same sources. We don't listen to the same radio stations. We communicate using different platforms. but there are people in our buildings and our regions and the community in general that could really help us get this done. A couple people that come to mind, Fernando Lopez, who works at Kelly, a classified employee, does a wonderful job in getting and showcasing student talent. He has great connections with the community in that area. There are other people as well. The Ganas group in the North region is another. People like Alex Reina, who is on the equity committee at this point, has quite a bit of experience, and there are others. I just think these people could help folks like Misael and Larry and other people at the Ed Center staff. I just hope we don't turn too much over to OED and have them pass down a very attractive slide and all the 12 steps, but we also have quite a few tools right here at our disposal. Some smart people who could really improve what we're doing with regard to community engagement. I know it's almost March and we're still hobbled by COVID-19, and we always seem to need more time, but we need to get things in place if we can't get it this time, maybe for the next time, we need to get this started right away. In my mind, nothing's more important. That's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Tom. I put my hand up because I want to say something. Actually, it kind of feeds on what you just said, Tom. And Juan Carlos, I see your hand still up. I'm not sure if that is you said something. And also, I just also want to encourage people who have not spoken yet. Please feel free to put your hand up. I remember when I was a first or second year on this committee, and I didn't speak much. I kind of listened and lurked, I guess is the word people use these days. But everyone's opinion is important. The one thing I wanted to say, and then I'll go to Juan Carlos and then anyone else who raises their hand, is even though we have this tool, the ODE thing, and we've been doing this before already as a district, and we can take whatever they have and make it what's right for us. But the one thing I want to say is remember that our role here, us 14, whether you're elected or appointed, is to represent the community. And obviously I am not living the life of my daughter's friend's mom who I described before, but I can to some degree engage her. That's part of my job as a volunteer in this committee, to be able to find out what that person's needs are. It's not just me, it's everyone here. And I know this, I'm probably preaching to the converted, you all understand it, but I guess my point is, we're not going to wait till March of 2023 for us as individuals, through our networks, through people we know, through groups we're part of, through whatever it is, to bring to this committee and obviously then to the board where our priorities are. And so just don't forget that. Don't look at, no offense to ODE and no offense, Andrea, to bring this up today, but remember, we're doing this job today. And so I just want to encourage everyone, again, you're here for a reason. You're giving up an hour and a half to 2 hours, I guess it will be, of your time on a Monday night. And that's a heavy responsibility. And I think everyone here takes it seriously. So Juan Carlos, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I like the way Gordon has presented, the ask in a way that he said, can you bring some suggestions how we can make this happen? In fact, the how we can make this happen, that's really when I see communities transform. I've seen communities stuck into discussing and spending so much time discussing why something will not be able to happen. Or we can't do this because A, B, and C. We can't make this happen because A, B, and C. But when you bring the perspective of how can we make this happen, a lot of things happen, a lot of magic happens. So I add my voice to that, to finding ways to fund the librarians. But since I've heard, this is not the first time I've heard, that there is an equity issue, I don't know what that means. But if it means that all of our kids need to have a trusted adult, somebody who knows about the education system, that might be an equity issue, because not all families know about the education system because of language barriers, because maybe they have limited or little education. That's the equity people are talking about, great. And you're gonna bring bilingual, bicultural librarians to be able to attend to kids that might be more comfortable speaking Spanish or other languages. Is that the equity you're talking about? Are you thinking about then training those bilingual cultural librarians? Is that the equity? I just don't know, but that's what I'm assuming. And I'm excited if that's the case to get behind this. Thank you.
7:41, just as a time check. I know that before we go, and we certainly can go till 8, we want to have as robust a conversation as we can, but we also do want to look at the future dates, make sure that everyone has them on the calendar. I will add one more thing, just as chair, I just want to say, and I've had discussions obviously here, the group, and also individually with some of you over the years. These are such important discussions. I know people have said before that a budget is a moral document. I'm sure you've heard that one. But if we are really going to look at what's best for our kids, and at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, then I think it's good that we can have discussions here. They may be difficult or uncomfortable at times, but I think we have a place that we can respect each other and talk with each other and even disagree on some things. And that's okay. But I just want to say, to set that tone, I think we all kind of are on the same page with that. But I'll just use the privilege as chair, since I have the microphone right now, to just say how much I appreciate all of you. And I want us all to feel comfortable as we go forward with the next however many more meetings we have. And this is definitely a much more robust schedule than we've had in years past, in terms of numbers of meetings anyway, that we do feel comfortable, that we feel safe to be able to say things to each other. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure we all have the same goal, which is our kids. So not to be too cheesy, sorry, but I was thinking about that when I was hearing Juan Carlos, you talk now, and some of the others from before. Any other hands up, any other comments or thoughts right now? If not, I think.
Josh, do you want me to bring up the list of
Yeah,
meetings?
yeah, maybe that would be a good idea. And as you bring that up, I guess I'll ask a question. So we've had, this is our second or third, I can't keep track.
This is our second meeting.
Second official meeting. The first one before they started was the intro kind of meeting, right?
Yeah, the January 24th meeting was the presentation of the initial 5-year forecast and just kind of our kickoff, talking about enrollment, talking about kind of where we were starting.
Got it. And so going forward, as we added last time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more meetings. I guess one question before we go to the content of each one is if we've booked 6 to 8 in the past because we had only 3 or 4 each season, at least in my time on this committee. I don't know if I don't think there's anything called for by the law that it has to be a certain amount of time. Maybe I'll ask consensus, if given we have more meetings, should we do an hour and a half instead? Do people still feel we booked 2? I like consensus. That's how I try to, I'm seeing nods, but I'm not sure what that's for. Anne, go ahead.
I think an hour and a half seems, 2 hours you can't get anything done with an hour. There's too much to say. Hour and a half is probably a good goal to try to keep things moving forward and concise. And given this, there's a lot of meetings.
Yeah.
I'm pro hour and a half.
Good, good. Any other thoughts? I saw 2 thumbs up. That's good. I see no dissent. Why don't we do this then, if this works for everybody? And I'll ask staff. And it's still your hand up. Sorry, I thought I saw another one. Why don't we say an hour and a half for the next 5 meetings? And after next meeting, if we think we need more time, we could revert back. Or if some of the like April 25, the presentation or continued discussion May 2nd, maybe before we get to that, we'll think, hey, let's change it. But for now, let's do an hour and a half. I see nods, so good. Appreciate that. So just going through it, or actually, Andrea, did you want to go through this, or I can take us through?
I can walk us through real quickly. So looking forward to our next meeting, March 14th, what I would ask is that the committee members read through the section of the ODE guidance on community engagement to get some ideas of what you want, all of the things we've talked about tonight, to continue that discussion, to talk about when you look at what ODE has put out as structure, how will we fill it in the best possible way? How will we make it 4J and really make it an effective and efficient way of doing things, but also how will we reach the people that maybe we haven't been reaching before? How will we do this in the best possible way to get the best outcome we can for this? Because this is going to be a lot of work. And if we put in that work, we want a great outcome at the other end. We want this to be solid. Looking to March 28th, I would expect we will present you might say we're going to review the all funds budget. At the January meeting, we talk about the general fund, but we don't talk about the other funds in the budget. And this is a chance for the budget committee, especially members who are new, to just understand that there are other parts of the budget and what those parts of the budget do. So it's really more informational to let folks get a view into the entire picture. At the April 25th meeting, we would present the 2022-23 superintendent's proposed budget. So all of those things that we talked about at the statutory requirement, some of those things will happen here. We have an optional meeting for May 2nd. That could be a meeting to continue discussion. It could also be a meeting for other things, or even to approve the proposed budget and declare the taxes and levies. But our last meeting that we need, where we need to make sure we've wrapped up all of our work, is May 9th. So we need to make sure that we've covered our bases by May 9th so that we have sufficient time to do all of the things we need to do before this goes to the board in June.
Two questions, if I may, and then if anyone else does too. I think you answered one of them, which is May 9th. That gives the board enough time under the law to do what they need to do in terms of public comment and approving the budget and all that stuff, right?
So that gives us enough time to notice the budget, to put it in the newspaper, to do all of the things we need to do to make sure that when the board receives the proposed budget in June, all of our local budget law requirements have been met and they can move forward with their work.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you. And then the other question I had is, just as we go through the agenda for these different meetings, to always include, as I'm sure you do, obviously, time for discussion. So I just want people to realize that even though it does say only on May 2nd, date held for continued discussion, that there's definitely ample time at each meeting, as we've seen tonight and before. And I say this particularly for newer members, that discussion is key and it's important, and for us to bring our priorities forward. So anyone else have any thoughts or questions? Oh, I see 3 hands up. I see Maya, then Gordon, and then Laurel. So let's just do it in that order, since that's how you're on my screen. Maya, go ahead.
So I guess my question is kind of a 2-part question. Josh or Andrea or whoever can answer this. I'm wondering first, how does the budget committee build its meeting agendas, and where in these 5 meetings would we be able to have a chance to talk about, like what Gordon brought up tonight, to be able to discuss the possibility of having information and perhaps offer guidance to the priorities we'd like to see, not just next year, but well, I guess not just for the process of that, the 12-step program. I guess it's not a 12-step program, but the 12-step outline, but also, where it's librarians, as Gordon brought up, or other topics. I'm just wondering where that falls into this. And also how, just for the new folks, and myself included, how do these budget committee agendas get set? Is that something that you do, Josh, in conjunction with Andrea, or with the superintendent, or with our board chair? Or, so 2-part questions. Where would we fit that in? And also, how do we make these these agendas?
I can answer part of that, I think, and then I'll turn to Andrew or other staff. So what I did meet with the superintendent a couple weeks ago, I think it was. And what I did is I took notes that I had from last time that we as a committee had talked about in terms of our interests. One big issue was an open discussion, and then some of the other information that we needed. But I think it's, any kind of input from everyone makes total sense. And so it's not meant to be any kind of secretive process that just I as chair, or Juan Carlos and I also as chair and vice chair also spoke together as well. But I think we all can should have input into that, particularly as we move over the next few meetings. The reason for tonight was just because we had our kind of first meeting before, and I felt there was a lot of discussion, and I wanted to see if we could focus it a little bit more today and still have that open discussion moment or time rather. So Sid, or Andrea or Sid or Juan Carlos, anything else on? I'm looking. Go ahead, Sid.
I think this is Sid. I don't think my screen is on. I think if there's something you want to see on an agenda, we could, because on 5B it says agenda items for next meeting, we could always add. So if there's something you want to talk about, for sure the next time, and the way we do it at the board meeting, Josh, is that if a couple of board members want to talk about something, then we add it. So I don't know how you'd want to do it here, but you have way more than 7 board members, but you could ask for interest on what they want to talk about or what they want to add to the agenda.
You know, I like openness. My thought would, if this logistically would work, is for those of us on the committee to email the budget committee as a whole. Is that something that is allowed to be done? I mean, under public records or under committee rules? Mary's saying no. I forgive me, I don't know enough about that part of it. Or email me. Can I bring forward to staff what people's thoughts are? Mary, I'm looking to you, but I don't know. Can anyone answer that? Any staff or other members?
They could email just you, Josh. Yes.
Okay. Does that work?
That was part of what I wanted to bring up, was having a system to show, like, you know, when we should bring up stuff that would pertain to what we want to change for the budget this year, and also what would, you know, how to have that system of what can we do this year and what may have to wait till next year or further out. So putting together some kind of system around that, I think is important to make it clear for everyone, because right now
You just muted, Laurel.
Said the host muted me. Thanks. Anyway, but did you guys hear anything I said?
Yeah, you just disappeared at the end of that last sentence.
Anyway, so a system, some kind of a system in place. So maybe we email the budget committee leadership team, which is you and Juan Carlos. And if we want to have one board member on that, it would probably be Judy, if Judy's okay with that, and a staff member so they can have eyes on it. So, because we definitely want them to have heads up on whatever that is.
Yeah, this may be a legal question if staff is still on, but if we do have, let's say, one person, let's just say Laurel as an example, emailing me and Juan Carlos and superintendent, Sid, the superintendent, the 3 of us, I just want to make sure that doesn't create a public meeting if we're a certain number of people on an email. Does that make sense? And forgive me for not knowing better.
It's not a quorum.
It's not a quorum, so it's not okay. Because I'm comfortable with that we can cover build the agenda for each of these with what people bring to us.
We can't have a discussion. That's the thing
Okay.
I think you were going towards.
Yeah.
We can't all be going back and forth and have a big old chat about it.
and then vote on what to do and things like that, right? So I think I like that idea. I guess I'll look for consensus, and I don't remember if our email addresses are actually on the 4J website anymore. At one point, budget committee members were. I don't know if we are because of probably phishing schemes and things like that. Is there a way, I guess someone from 4J, I'm asking staff.
Yes, we can get emails to the group. Yes.
Okay. So Juan Carlos, you okay with you and me being kind of the point people on this, us working together more?
Yeah, and I'm glad actually that there's 2 questions about the process and the system to set up the budget agenda, because at the end of the day, the agenda needs to be owned by this group, and kind of getting a better idea how we arrive to the budget committee agenda. That's important. That's a transparency. That's good. I don't have an issue with the emailing. That's not going to be a quorum the way this is being proposed, which is great. Let's not make it too complicated. I mean, earlier I mentioned, hey, when somebody needs to have a follow-up, like I don't want to lose track of Gordon's request. That will be perfectly on the item what I mentioned, requests for information from staff. That would be, if it is right there on the agenda, then everybody knows that that's your chance to bring some items, or you have a specific way. In other places that have been involved, you have a specific email for like the leadership, the president, vice president, you send the email to that person. That's only for those people. But I think it's important that we have a way an open way to send in suggestions for the agenda item. And of course, you also have to understand around things that we do have to cover. That is just so that we end up in time and we actually hear all the information that we need to have. So thank you for bringing that up.
Actually, logistically, and I know we're short on time in 3 minutes, but does it make sense to have one email address that can be created that would be, let's say, me and Juan Carlos as the chair and vice chair, and Sid, I think you said you and then I think Laurel had mentioned the idea of, or someone had mentioned, I can't remember who, of a board member too. Does that make it difficult, or is that okay to include a board member, or is it better just the three? I'm sort of looking for a little
Laurel
bit.
said Judy, which is the board chair.
Board chair, okay.
So I think we can do that easily. I don't know. You said easily. We can do that. We can do that. I don't want to say easily because I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just that way it's easier than having to remember all 4 email addresses. Someone was talking. Who was that? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, yes, we can set up a listserv that routes those emails to all of the participants. And it really does help us in being able to collect those requests and then be able to prepare to answer those questions. Because it's important. In the past, what we've done is when we had a question like that, we would go out to our staff members, to our experts out there and bring them in to present to the budget committee. That's part of the process that you don't just want to hear from me, you don't want to hear me talk all this time. You want to hear from the people who are boots on the ground doing the work and what they might comment on or recommend in that topic area. Knowing that, knowing what the question is gives us the opportunity to reach out to those folks and see if we can bring them in to talk with you directly.
So it sounds like a listserv of Josh, Juan Carlos, Sid, and Judy. And just a reminder, I may have incorrectly mixed up public records and public meetings before. That's a fine listserv. I think anything that is emailed to it would be a public record because it's being emailed to public officials, et cetera. So that's just as a reminder. But yeah, that would work. All right. Anything, and so maybe send something out to us with that email address and come up with some fancy name like, BudCom leadership, or I don't know, something, but something that'll be obvious. And then that way people could let us know. Good. I see we're 1 minute. Hey, if we can end 1 minute early, that'd be awesome.
Ooh, yeah.
Thank you all. I don't know if we need a motion to adjourn, but I'm just going to say we can adjourn by acclamation, hopefully. Someone help me. Christine, is that good? Thank you all. Have a great night. Thank you again for your service. Really appreciate, really proud to be with you. Take care.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep. Bye.